Hey John, how you doing?
Well, as you can see, I'm a little worse for wear after eye surgery, but
Oh, is that what it was? I thought you were that's the results of negotiating a tough deal.
yeah, you should see the other realtor. The No, you know what though? Maybe it's a bit of a metaphor for the market we're in these days. It's been a tough one, and I'm sure many feel a little battered and bruised,
Yeah, it's been
if
an
not a little
interesting
bit.
market, man. It's certainly been throwing some fists around, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's not been kind to many. It's obviously a buyer's market. We've seen that now for a number of months. Inventory's way up, days on market is longer, prices have ticked down a little bit. Houses are still selling, just not at the same clip that we've seen in the past. And I think for buyers, there's opportunity, and for them, I think what's holding buyers back is the lack of consumer confidence right now until we get some
I
trade
agree.
in place.
Yeah, I mean that's the sentiment out there right now is that uncertainty in the economy right now, right? I mean,
Yeah,
every day we hear something new about tariffs, or we hear something new. And I mean, we say something new, but it's not new. It's the same rhetoric we've heard for 5 months.
yeah.
So that continues, and I mean, we talked last month about buyer paralysis. Well, that paralysis continues, man. I mean, buyers are sitting back and really evaluating, do I need to make this big commitment today, and or should we just sit tight and wait? I mean, inventory levels are the highest they've ever been. Sales continue to be flat. We've seen a decrease in sales actually month over month, year over year. We've seen a decrease in value price. Again, that fluctuates from neighborhood to neighborhood. We have seen some activity from the luxury market. There's still some
Yeah.
activity happening there. But even the low end market that we talked about, how that entry level market has been still active, really competitive in the sense of, I guess not competitive, really burdened, where buyers are really stretching to get into homes, and they're saying, you know what, this is the best I can do. I mean, I don't know about you, but some of the offers I've been working with lately, it has been a tough negotiation because buyers are pushing up against their limits, both limits in
Well,
finance that they can afford, and also limits in what they're willing to withstand, and carry the burden of.
you make a good point because I was going to say in some cases it might be a perceived limit and what they perceive as maybe, I don't want to take quite the risk at this price point if I think prices are going to maybe come down a little bit further. They want to pay tomorrow's price if they think it's going to be lower.
And that's what's happening out there. I mean, people are, when you think a deal is done, it's not necessarily done today. And I mean, you and I talked about it, the risks that people have to consider today, even when you have a firm deal put together, that window between when you sign that firm deal and you close, a lot of things can happen in this kind of market and economy that people have to be aware of. So
Well, that's
caution
what
is really the word that we should be putting out there. Be cautious in what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think that's where their reluctance to pull the trigger comes from. They're worried about whether or not they've got a job next month, and if that's your concern, obviously you're not pulling the trigger on a purchase. Like there's no way around that, I think. But as I'm hopeful that we'll see some trade deals in place, and we'll kind of get back to some kind of normalcy in that regard. From a geopolitical point of view. There's of course the issue of interest rates, and for a long time there'd been optimism about maybe a couple more rate cuts this year. I'm not so convinced. It sounds like some of the banks are starting to kind of
All the
feel the
big
same
banks have
way.
kind of taken a step back on that position. They're all
Yeah,
thinking that it's, we're going to be more in a hold position right now. We're not in a
but
position to take more cuts.
I mean I don't know if that's a pressing matter though. Frankly, I mean I
Well,
look.
John, if you think about it, we've beaten this around a lot. We've had seven rate
Yeah.
reductions since we peaked out, and not one of them has spurred the market. And
No, and today you can get a 5-year fixed for low fours,
yeah,
4.9 give or take.
which is not the end of the world right now in this market.
No,
Um,
that's actually not a bad rate at all, frankly.
no, I mean, I remember when I bought, when we bought when we first moved to Oakville. I mean, we had almost a 4.3% mortgage, and I mean, we thought we won the lottery with that at the time.
Well,
Um,
I had to renew about a year ago, and the best I could get, and that was kind of twisting the arm of the mortgage guy a bit, was 499.
yeah.
So if like 419 right now, I mean that might not seem like a big difference numerically, but that actually translates to a healthy difference in a payment.
So I don't think that's like, yeah, you got some buyers out there that are waiting, thinking that we're going to come down a bit more, but I don't think that's the thing that's keeping people at bay. I
No.
really don't. I think it's more around, our, we want to pay, like you said earlier, we want to pay tomorrow's prices today if we're going to buy. Therefore, they're looking for the best of the best deal they can find. I mean,
Yeah.
they're really shopping around right now, and they're really, I mean, the offers I've seen come in, I got to give
They're
it a second
low.
look when it comes in, because you expect a low ball offer, but some of these
Yeah.
are just out the lunch, and
They're
you don't
lower
even
than
know how to
low.
respond to them. But you can't fault the buyer for taking a shot. Now, at the same time, we talk about the doom and gloom of what's going on out there and the down in the market. There are still homes selling,
Absolutely, there are.
not the rate that we're used to. And
Well,
I
not
think a
as a
lot of that's
percentage of the worst
because,
things, but in some communities, the number of the physical number of sales actually isn't that much different than say the same time last year or the year before that.
Well, the
As a
other big
percentage
thing
of the new
is,
listings, well, yes, it's not great.
but the other thing is, I mean, we're still stuck in looking how things how things came out over the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, we had a market that you couldn't put a home on the market and keep it there for a week. It was gone.
Yeah.
To now we're at the opposite end of that spectrum. There's just so much more inventory out there. A 5 or 10% reduction in overall sales, while it sounds horrible, it's not horrible. It's more on the flip side where we have more inventory. So inventory to sales numbers are dramatically different today than what we've seen in the last number of
Yeah.
years. But go back 10 years. 10 years ago, we weren't in a bad market. We were in a balanced market and we had about the same amount of sales we have today.
Well, the
So,
thing, it's become a period of time, and we always talk about how it's important for a house to be properly presented and prepared. Um, in a hot market, even though we'll talk about it, the reality is chances are it's going to go. But right now, like that kind of thing is paramount. You have got to present the house as best you can. When you've got when I can drive around the corner and see four or five other houses that are reasonably similar, all with a for sale sign on the lawn.
and the buyers are looking at all of them.
Of course they are. They're booking an appointment every one of them. And
Every follow-up call I've made on every showing that I've had, the agents have come back and said, "Yeah, we've looked at 4 or 5 or 6 homes, or 10 homes or 12 homes even."
and you know which ones they are.
Yeah, and yeah, my clients haven't made any final decisions yet, but you're on their list. Well, what
Right.
does
So,
that mean?
but when you've got that kind of environment, how do you stand out? That's where presentation becomes critical and pricing becomes critical. Like at the end of the day, you've got to have a strategy that makes you look better than all those other ones around the corner.
And I think that's where people are coming in. I mean, you can talk about looks and everything else, but I think one of the things that I've noticed is roof, furnace, air conditioner, like structural parts of the house are the
Yeah.
critical pieces people are looking at.
Yeah.
They're not looking at the color of your wall or if you got a new kitchen or if you've got flowers in the vase on the table or, that's not the part that, yes, that brings people in, they look at it. But what I've found is people are coming back about the age of the roof, the age of the
Yeah.
air conditioning. They're looking at structural things that they're looking at us saying, yeah, well, we're gonna have to spend 15, 20, $30,000 over the next 3, 4, 5 years replacing these items. Those are the things. So
Well,
those
it's
are the things
big
to be
ticket
aware of.
infrastructure that
They are.
you've got to, they have to budget for it. We're in fiscal times, I think, where most people are kind of reining in their spending a bit. So
Hmm.
naturally, they want to make sure that the furnace is in good shape and the roof's in good shape.
And the challenge you have there is, you got somebody that's been in their home for 20 or 30 years and they have done a furnace and they have done a roof, and maybe they did it 15 or 20 years ago, and it's still a good roof. It doesn't leak. The shingles are not curled or anything like that. But the buyers are looking at it from the perspective of, I got to do a roof in 5 years, probably.
Yeah.
Right? And then they're looking at it saying that's a $10,000 to $15,000 roof I got to put on that house, and I can't pay for that in my mortgage. I'm paying that on top. So even though you've priced your house around, having to get those things based on the age of where they are, buyers are still trying to use that as leverage, right, wrong, or indifferent. They're
Yeah.
things that you need to be prepared to hear back on during your negotiation because they're going to use every bit of leverage they can to justify why they want to pay less for your home.
Absolutely. But if you've got the right game plan, right strategy, presented well, hopefully you've taken care of maybe a few things that you think are probably going to come up on a home inspection in advance of listing, and you price it right. As we were talking previously, and I had said, I had told you, it can be a daunting time for sellers.
Mhm.
And we're not going to beat around the bush. Frankly, it is. But
Yeah.
at the same time, with proper preparation, you can get through it. And that's the value of having a good realtor on your side, whoever that may be. There's a couple good ones on this video, but
Well, I think having realistic expectations is
yeah,
also in line with that as well. I mean, you know what? As much as we'd all love to sell our house for what they were selling for at the peak of 21, we're not in that market today. So, you can't use that as your barometer or what you're looking
no,
at. You need to look at your numbers and you need to know what your expectations are based on what the market's willing to bear. Because people are not going to pay more for your house than the one down the street that is almost exactly the same, other than you have a nicer tile and you have a nicer wall color. That's not going to entice people to spend more money on your house because those things are relatively easy to change, and they're looking at it from a value proposition in today's
yeah.
market. You got to be realistic. So on both sides, right? I mean,
I,
buyers and sellers.
I think this is going to be, and we've talked about a lot of this kind of stuff before, and I think that's going to be the message, frankly, right through summer. I don't see this changing. Next month we'll be talking about July numbers, and in September we'll be talking about August numbers.
Mhm.
I don't think we're going to see much change over the next 2 to 3 months in terms of,
John, I think it's a lot longer than that. So I
well,
think if
that,
you
that
are
gets
in the
into the next
market.
season, so we'll cross that bridge when we get
Yeah,
there.
I get it, but I mean, I think if you're sitting back thinking that you're waiting for a market bounce so that you can go on the market and sell, the one thing that I will say that if you're going to be selling in this market, you want to be buying in this market because what you're going to deal with as a seller dealing with a buyer, you're going to be the buyer on the other side trying to negotiate your own best
Yeah.
deal later, and you could potentially get that best deal you're looking for.
Which is
Um,
why you want to time the two transactions as closely together as you can.
that, but I also, when you're doing your math, you want to look at your differential. Like if you sold for $200,000 more on your house and you bought for $200,000 more on your purchase, are you really coming out any farther ahead? Like, is it
No,
about the glory of saying I got this for my house, or is it
no,
more
you
important that you got where you want and you still ended up with the same amount of money in your pocket?
in your example, you just paid more land transfer tax.
Well, you did, right?
So, uh,
So, I mean,
yeah,
when you add
so
it all
if you're a
up,
bit, I mean, so you flip that around, you're a little bit light on, little bit lower than the number you thought you were going to get for your house, and but you paid less for the next one. I think that's a win, frankly.
well, I think so too. I mean, and if you're an upsizer in this market, I mean,
Huge
there should be nothing
opportunity.
holding you back right now because you're buying that more expensive house for less money. Yeah, you're getting less on your sale, but in all likelihood,
You're
that
getting
more
value though.
expensive home is down a lot more dollars than your house that you're upsizing is down.
And as a, that's good value.
For sure. I mean, percentages are one thing, but at the end of the day, it's the dollars that count,
Yeah,
right?
numbers say whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. So,
So,
I
well,
think looking at where we are for what happened in June. I don't think there's any surprises.
no,
I don't think it should discourage anybody from looking to buy or sell a home. I think you just need to be a little more engaged in what that expectation is and measure what your net outcome is going to be as opposed to what you're going to pay or sell a house for. And you might surprise yourself and find out, you know what, we can still do what we want to do. If you're downsizing, you're going to have lower property tax, you have lower insurance, you have lower utilities. All of those things, doing it a year in advance, it's going to make a difference to you at the end of the day. It takes that burden away, especially
yeah,
if you got a house that you got to do some work on, the one you're moving into, maybe you don't need to if you're buying right. Take into account all of the different factors when you're making a decision, not just based on I want to get X dollars for my home. And you might surprise yourself. If you need help, give us a call. I mean, we have all those calculations. It's something we do all the time is help
yeah,
people understand what the net differential is going to be. And I mean, John, I got clients out there I know that are selling that are not buying another home, and there's no harm in them holding because they are giving up equity.
yeah,
But for the lion's share of clients that are buying and selling, and selling one house to buy a new house, I'm trying to get people to really take a look at the entire picture and not just at what that number is. How are you going to fare out in the end of all this? And is it the time to maybe make that move?
well, to sum it up, I guess you just have to strategically work with the market you got.
Well, that's it. And none of us have a crystal ball to see when this is going to turn, but I don't see any indications of what I'm looking at to say there's a some kind of change coming. Maybe when Trump and Carney hammer out a deal, we'll get a little bit of a bump in the market, but those things take time to happen. So while you're waiting, what are you missing out on?
Well, I mean, I guess the encouraging note on that topic, I guess, is stock markets are largely back to where they were before he rocked the boat a few months back.
Yep,
So maybe that adds a bit of
precursor
encouragement.
to what's coming,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Anyway, we'll see what happens.
All right, man. Well, let's hope that we see something special happen over the summer. I don't think either one of us are super optimistic about that happening, but you know what? We just keep plugging away, doing what we're doing, and definitely reach out and ask if you got questions or you want some help understanding what those numbers look like, and that may put things in a bit of a different perspective. And maybe it is the right time for you, and maybe it's not, but the numbers will always help you understand it better.
Yeah, and we're always here to help.
Absolutely.
All
All right,
right,
bud. Till the
talk to you
next time.
soon. See ya.